Today we have 84 things that only true OG Valheim fans will remember from its original release in 2021, with a few tidbits sprinkled in from its alpha release from 2018. For starters, only 5 sacrificial stones could be found at the game's spawn, with originally ending at the 5th boss, with 2 more being added and at least 1 more coming with its 1.0 release. The UI looked totally different too, with most notably the stamina bar not having a number to display your remaining stamina, and a strange vertical bar in the bottom left, colored corresponding to the food types you had eaten. Likewise, the food buffs weren't labeled with their durations, and were missing their now fork labels symbolizing their prioritized stat. This was because foods were far more powerful before. I mean, check out how much health I had in the plains. At this time, foods weren't structured to be stamina or health focused, rather, most foods increase both stats, making for some massive health and stamina bars in late game. This was balanced in Hearth and Home and forced players to be more considerate with their food choices. The best food in the game at that time was quite different too. Stay tuned for that. The 5th skill was once called Unarmed. Creatures were also missing their alert status icons, making it difficult to tell when they had spotted you, with the red exclamation or the yellow icon now indicating when they are on the hunt. You couldn't hold your attack button to do things like chop trees, and you were forced to click it repeatedly for every chop, a subtle but excellent quality of life change. Axes also did not have a secondary attack, making dealing with stumps far more difficult. Boars still covered the meadows, but their meat wasn't a guaranteed drop like it is now. Further, it wasn't called boar meat either, but generic raw meat. Sleeping could be spammed without a cooldown. Nowadays, you have to wait until midday to sleep. Inventory management wasn't as easy without the place stack button in chests, nor the ability to automatically store mats by holding interact. Changing snap points also wasn't possible, making building far more tedious. The build menu had less organization with the absence of the heavy build tab, now accounting for the stone and other rock build pieces. Forsaken powers took way longer to trigger, which made it far harder to pull these off when in a pinch. Although, this made them easier to jump cancel when fat fingering. You had far fewer hairs and beard style options, with more being added in later updates. The game was far less customizable too, without the addition of world modifiers, forcing players to play on the standard settings. No controller support existed at the time, many new graphic and custom settings had been added, and the game was only on PC, later being added to Xbox. Here's hoping we one day get a PlayStation release. The troll also looked quite a bit different, admittedly looking more plain and much dopier than they look today. Even further back before early access, 2 versions of the troll existed, one in the Black Forest and another in the mountains. His armor set bonus was also overhauled, then increasing your sneaking by a set percentage, rather than boosting your sneak skill. Weapon skills could also be leveled by simply hitting any object with your weapon. Smelter, rock, whatever. Nowadays, you must hit another creature or player in PvP to gain weapon experience. There was also no point of targeting the troll's head, as creature weak points were not a thing in 2021. The Bone Tower Shield and Butcher Knife did not exist and were added later. Tames, as a result, were trickier to deal with, as you could accidentally kill them with any weapon if you weren't careful. And you couldn't rename your pets at the time either. Absolutely tragic. Portals were a little buggy, as if you renamed them and jumped in too quickly, you could end up stranding yourself far from home. Great Oak Shaman didn't drop butte berries. Burial chamber entrances used to be inaccessible by dangerous skeleton, acting as a haven for Vikings. Nowadays, since a Unity engine update, a skeleton can now traverse the chamber step. And before that, they were even more basic looking and protected by a far more primitive version of the Draugr. None of the seasonal items were in the game, which meant no Yule tree, maypole, and stylish hats like the pointy and midsummer crown amongst many others. Regrowing trees wasn't possible without the existence of tree seeds in the beech and birch, and acorns neither. Campfire bonfires and hearths never took damage when dealing damage as they do now, making which would have made this broken boss strategy even better, but fire damage didn't stack back then like it does now. The food preparation table and mead kettle weren't in the game, with all recipes residing at the base cauldron. Mead bases all had the same icon, which without inspecting them, made them indistinguishable from one another. Plus, the cauldron never required upgrades, with all food recipes becoming available as you discovered the food ingredients. Copper veins used to look like this. Signs required a workbench to build, now being one of the few structures permitted outside the range of the bench. Comfort max was way higher, with rugs being able to stack upon each other to achieve higher levels of comfort and longer rested buffs, no longer achievable in the game's current state. I'd happily take this behavior back. The stagger bar didn't exist, despite stagger being a mechanic at the time. The serpent scale shield was craftable, but didn't provide a resistance to pierce damage while blocking. Serpent meat and cooked stew were two of the best foods in the game before the rebalancing in Hearth and Home, with the stew giving a staggering 160 total stats. The Elder model and its trophy were vastly different, now with significantly more detail, but at least more than it had in its alpha from 2018. Plus, things like boss health bars have come a long way. In Alpha Valheim, the Elder dropped a consumable that increased max health instead of the Swamp Key, which it does nowadays. Haldor was the only NPC with both Hildur and the Bogwitch coming in later updates. However, his wares were different, without the Thunderstone for the Obliterator, barrel rings for barrels, and eggs for chickens. Skills such as crafting, farming, and cooking were all absent, with those only recently coming to the game in late 2024. But maybe worst of all, you could not pet Halstein at this time. Fish in the game were purely generic with only a standard fishing bait. More fish, baits, the fishing skill, and the hat would come later. The Draugr model has changed, no longer occasionally having iron helmets and shields. Still, vastly improved over the alpha version of this creature. The female Draugr archer model wasn't around either, at least I don't remember seeing it. Iron once looked like this. Abomination surprises were not a thing, with them coming later, and neither was its root and corresponding root armor set, including the busted root harness. The iron cooking station was not yet craftable, making for an expanded use case for the standard cooking station, allowing the cooking of larger meats like lox meat. If you destroyed a cooking station with meat cooking, the meat would be destroyed permanently, not found on the ground like it would be today. Only the Iron Band and Tower were shield options in the swamp, with the Buckler coming later. You could not make armor stands to show off your favorite armor sets either, forced to store them in chests. The reinforced chest had only 18 inventory slots, since been expanded to 24, and sharing maps with friends was more difficult without the cartography table. Further, map icons could not be hidden like they can now. Unlike the Elder, Bolmest looked mostly the same, but his trophy was far simpler since seeing a significant redesign. Wolves like Boar only dropped generic raw meat. As a result, meals like wolf skewers weren't on the menu. Onion seeds were not in the game either, and therefore a complete absence of its foods like onion soup as one example. Drake trophy drop rates were a mere 1%, making the Drake helmet very difficult to craft. One of two creatures from the initial game who would have their trophy rates increased at later dates. Frost caves were absent from the mountains, including its creatures in the Ulv, cultists, bats, and therefore craftables from the materials like jute carpets and the almighty Fenrir's armor and Ripper Fist weapon. Neither the crystal knife, battle axe, or crystal walls were available either. Cooking in the plains was simpler without the stone oven. Cooked meals as we now know them, like lox meat pie, were prepared directly at the cauldron. Tar pits weren't yet in the game, and therefore no growths or the tar resource. Dark wood pieces could not be crafted as a result. Nor classic furniture like the long table, hot tub, or black metal chest. Disquito were far worse, dealing more damage at launch, only adding additional pain with its then 1% trophy drop rate. Locks were tameable without the saddle and riding skill coming later. Flowers still had to be refined at a windmill, but had a tiny stack size of only 20 compared to the more reasonable 40 today. Bosses could be harpooned and dragged to locations easier for players to deal with, which was made most popular against Yagluth, allowing players to drag him into a hole. His difficulty was modified like Motor and Bowmask 2, but I can't for the life of me remember if they were made easier or more difficult. I recall them being easier, but my memory could be failing me here. Yagluth didn't drop the Torn Spirit, but rather a generic Yagluth drop that would later enable travel to the Mistlands. The misty biome at the time resembled a darker black forest on your minimap compared to the purple haze today. Inside it was littered with ancient trees like that of the swamp, but covered in cobwebs and the occasional skulls scattered across the ground. To no surprise, before the Mistlands update, magic was not a thing. No Eider, staves, or magic skills to speak of. The Deep North and Ashlands to the south were both connected to the main continent, having been split from the mainland in the Ashlands update. The Ashlands was a barren, ashy wasteland with very little content. Yet, Surtling, otherwise found in the swamp, did populate the map's southern hemisphere. Of all the things that have changed, Surtling aren't one of them, looking the same as they did in 2018, now in 2025. In 2021, they protected the original version of flay metal that was fully mineable and smeltable at the blast furnace, although nothing could be made from them at the time. Believe it or not, once upon a time, they guarded what was called meteorites and placed in the original planes before its biome was developed. So, how many of the 84 things did you remember? If you want a further nostalgia test, check out this video right here where I play the full alpha version of Valheim from 2018.